Sanjiv, how's it going?
Hey Griffin, how are you? Going good, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thanks so much for joining. I don't want to beat around the bush too much because I think we have a fantastic episode lined up. Um, Before we dive into the conversation with me and Sanjiv, I want to talk a little bit about exactly what Behind the Future is. So don't fact check me on this, but Behind the Future is the longest running and most widely distributed podcast or LinkedIn Live series on enterprise architecture and digital transformation. Behind the Future started in Norway, where Ardoq, where I work, is headquartered, and then it spread to the UK and the US. 16 episodes now, so this is our 17th episode. Thousands of signups and downloads on LinkedIn and also YouTube, where we're going to post this episode afterwards. The goal of these episodes is to get a glimpse into the future of business and technology, i.e., what will actually be the driving force behind the future. We don't really bias. Um, we've seen the profound impact that a business-focused and value-oriented enterprise architecture practice, along with digital transformation teams, can have on driving competitive advantage, helping companies be more agile, and generally driving business value. So in the past, we've had the pleasure of interviewing members, architects, and other folks in the show. And so I'm really happy to be talking with you today, Sanjiv.
Sure, same
Today,
here.
the title, yeah, the title of
I'm
the
glad to
episode
be part
today
of this
is The
discussion.
Business of Architecture.
Yep,
Cool. I think there's a little bit of lag on my end, so apologies. So yeah, we have a couple of things we're going to hit on, but first things first, Sanjiv, why don't you introduce yourself and talk to us about your career and kind of how you ended up where you are today?
sure. About me, I have a little over 22 years of experience. I'm currently working as an executive director with ZS based out of Princeton, New Jersey office, leading the technology advisory architecture engineering practice. So as part of this practice, me and my team support multiple pharma and medtech clients. We are a domain-centric technology and architecture group. Having said that, about my career, I have been a technologist all along. I have I have somehow dodged the non-technology work throughout my career. So I started as a programmer, then became a software engineer, architect. Now I lead a group of architects. So it was a fun-filled journey, and I'm continuing to enjoy the process. Um, so I'm happy to share what I've learned and what I'm learning in this discussion.
Cool. And I want to encourage the audience, if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat, and I will relay them to Sanjiv during the conversation. Um, Sanjiv, I'm curious, do you think your experience as a programmer has influenced, how you work as an enterprise architect today?
I would say yes, absolutely, because I've been in the trenches. Often people say that enterprise architecture is an ivory tower function, which is not the case for me. I've been on the trenches, started as a Java programmer, and then as a technology architect and a solution architect, I've handled patterns, design patterns in architecture, the famous Gang of Four, I would say, in my programming days. Now, all that experience, what I've gained as a software engineer and as an architect, is playing into the enterprise architecture consulting work, what me and my team is doing. We can appreciate what the programmers and software engineers think, and at the same time connect that thinking to business strategy. That really helps.
Mhm. And then what about ZS specifically? So what do you think is kind of ZS's unique value proposition for their architecture clients?
So about ZS, folks who have not known much about ZS, we are a management consulting firm. 40 years into this work, we primarily focus on pharma and medtech. That is about ZS. The value of our group is that we manage to codify domain knowledge into our enterprise architecture assets, what we bring to our clients. So that is what is many of our clients are excited about, because it kind of accelerates their strategy planning, and day-to-day operations work. So, for example, we have this well received offering called city planning, ZS city planning. In the life cycle of pharmaceutical companies, from we call it all the way from molecules to marketing, they want ways to look at planning their digital landscapes in a faster way with an outside-in validation. So that is where we partner with many of our clients and we accelerate their business strategy planning work. So we bring in business capability stencils, business process stencils. We onboard them into the EA tool of choice for them. And then we also bring in technology standards. We bring in like low level designs as well. So we start all the way from strategy to low level designs and we onboard all of this into the EA repository. That has been our strong area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that city plan concept, it kind of relates enterprise architecture back to the core practice of architecture as well. We had actually a question from the audience. What is business architecture and the role in business?
In a simplistic term, business architecture is all about understanding your business goals. So, for example, if the goal of a business is to improve their sales by 10%, how you convert that goal into themes and themes into use cases, and for those use cases, how you define the business architecture for it. So what are the capabilities, business capabilities which are required? Some capabilities can be like the old school capabilities and some might be like the modern innovative capabilities, how they all can come together and then how they integrate with each other. And then from there on, you lead to technology capabilities which will help you realize those business capabilities. So having that continuum in the thinking and how you codify it, that is the role of a business architect. Griffin, your screen is frozen. I don't know if it's at your end or my end.
Yeah, I think it's me. I'm just relocating to hopefully. Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Cool. Sorry about that. Are we? Yeah, okay, great. Sorry, let's keep going onward. So thanks for that answer. There was one more follow-up question. Can you explain the role of business architecture in a given project? And what are the most important traits that one needs to have a valuable business architecture?
So I would say the keyword there is domain, domain, domain. So a business architect, the architectural point of views, the tool, learning the tool, those are all second order skills. The first order skill is having that experience in the domain. So for example, for me and my team, it's mandatory to learn pharmaceutical business. The business context is the key. So I came in as a programmer. I came in as an architect, solution architect, starting from programmer days. But it was a little bit of learning for me. So it's been 5 years into this domain, and there has been like learning from the fire hose kind of an experience for me. So every time we engage in a project, we come up with some outside in domain knowledge, but oftentimes that domain knowledge needs to be tailored to the business context of the clients. So having that business contextual understanding and also the outside in industry knowledge is very important. So for example, like if we're going to reinvent the manufacturing floor for a pharmaceutical business, the business of manufacturing needs to be understood well. And then what are the business themes which are happening out there in the industry? We need to have that awareness. And then picking on those themes and trying to tailor it for the organization is very important. So I would say a role of a business architect is spend time in learning the domain and be an expert in that domain. And also another important skill for a business architect is collaboration and love language. I would say how you understand your audience, how you collaborate with them, how to convey the story, how to have that love language with them. Because the language you use for business is different from what the language you use for IT. So as an enterprise architect, you are sitting on the intersection of both. You need to pretty much convey your messages to two set of audience. So I would say another important skill for a business architect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. And I think this is a kind of a theme we'll come back to, but enterprise and business architecture are really those first layers of architecture that are more about people than about technology. And so you need to learn to speak the right language. I
Absolutely.
appreciate the questions from the audience. Let's keep them coming in. I do want to charge forward, but keep chiming in with questions. So, Sanjiv, do you want to talk about what you've been in the enterprise architecture space for a while? Are there current trends that you're seeing in the space?
Yeah. So if you can casually Google, you'll find a lot of trends out there in the internet. But I want to talk about these trends from my experience, my team's experience. So I don't want to bombard with too many trends, but only three things, which I would like to share from my pharmaceutical and medtech experience. The first trend is the the big pharma and mid-sized pharma and medtech clients. They have started accepting enterprise architecture as an institutional memory. So it used to be a technology centric function, but now, given the advent in the innovation in the EA platforms, what kind of like the feature rich EA platforms available out there in the market. And as they deploy these platforms, they want to create this repository or the platform as an institutional memory to, to push information and also to consume information. That's the first trend. And then they want to have a structured way of managing this body of work. That is the first one. Second trend is we are walking out of the COVID lockdowns. In this lockdown time, there were multi-million dollar digital transformation projects and investments has been made. So now there is a reckoning on operational expenditure. So the clients are often asking how I can manage the operational expenditure and budgets. I've invested on all this digital capabilities, but now I need to maximize my value out of it. I need to cut down cost. Tell me how. And the important trend, what we are observing is EA is in the forefront of such strategy projects where they are looking at their landscape as a whole and looking for opportunities to rationalize and cut down cost. That is the second trend. And third trend is EA is becoming a strategic function. It used to be a technology centric function, but now that is morphing into strategic function. So business is more consuming services from EA. EA is going closer to business. And that has been a difficult thing in the past. But now, as they start evolving their communication methodologies, storytelling approaches, and the frameworks, what business is understanding, businesses started appreciating EA more. These are the three trends I would say.
Hmm. Why do you think that there is this newfound appreciation of EA from the business side? Is it because post COVID, maybe the C-suite is realizing that there is a need for this strategic lens to IT, or is there something else that's kind of driving this new look at enterprise architecture?
So first one is EA has always been this ivory tower function in many places. So many don't understand what they do. But as we simplify things for business, they started appreciating the pragmatism of the frameworks, what it is bringing in. Business is always in the forefront of growth. They'll focus on agility, reacting to industry forces. That introduces a little bit of, I would say, chaos in the system. EA is an
Hmm.
antidote for that. It brings order to that chaos. It allows them to think clearly. So as we present these frameworks, simplified frameworks, and the way to organize information, they are looking at this framework and they're having this wow effect. They're saying like, wow, it's such a simple way to look at things. Thanks for bringing it up. Let's do it. So,
Yeah.
but if you go with them with a tool, they avoid us. So go with something which is very pragmatic. And this particular trend is helping business adopt EA without knowing that it's EA. Oftentimes, you have to avoid the word EA and focus more on the business context.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the branding of EA, and for a while, EA kind of was a bad word. And if you brought it up in certain rooms, you'd be kicked out because of this ivory tower perception. I also think working at a European company, there's a difference in the perception of EA in Europe that there is in North America. Have you seen any of that, like geographic differences in the perception of EA?
Yes, I can share a few experiences. So um, it's I would say the entrepreneurial spirit is a little different in US versus Europe. I would say that in Europe, the focus is more on methodologies and structure, which is good. In no way like I'm saying it's good or not good, no opinion on that, which is good because that is where, like, for example, be it GDPR compliance, be it like any regulatory aspects of it, which is protecting the customers, it's coming often from Europe, which is the good part. And having that EA mindset is a natural fit there. But we need to tailor EA as a brand for US American audience in a very different way. And even within US, the West Coast behavior is different, East Coast behavior is different. So there are more financial firms, pharmaceutical firms in East Coast. So they are more welcoming the structure what we are bringing in. In West Coast, it's more entrepreneurial. It's more like startup mindset. There they see EA as a stage gate or one more checkbox to tick, and we have seen that behavior. So we need to tailor our messages a little differently. So the innovative message of EA is the focus for West Coast, and more like business protective measures and enablement measures are the message for the East Coast clients. So we need to play into their needs and be of value to them
Yeah.
as we perceive
Yeah,
our business.
that's a great point, and it kind of goes back to your earlier point. You often have to kind of fine tune your message depending on who you're talking to. So I think that's interesting. There's a big difference between East Coast and West Coast companies.
Sure.
Let's move on to the next topic. So, based off of your experience, how can architects best explain the value of EA to their executive sponsors?
Definitely. So I talked about this earlier. First one is, I would say, it's very contextual. So understand your audience. Simon Sinek famously says, start with a why, right? So I would say that applies to EA more than ever. So always start with a why. Who are your audience and why they want to talk to you? Have that clarity and understand the love language. What is the language would resonate with them? Have that art of storytelling. Then second one is convey value in terms of the language they understand. So which is sometimes our audience understand the value of saving dollars. Sometimes they understand in terms of number of ideas, what you bring to the table. A HR audience would understand the value of learning hours and skills you are enabling the people. So understand your audience and tailor your messages. So I would call it another way I would call it the native or indigenous dashboards, right? So you're going to dashboard it to the type of audience you're dealing with. So that is very important. So having that skill is going to help you as an individual, as a team. Second one is don't be a one-trick pony. If you have started your journey as a business architect focusing on domain, extend that skill to include technology architecture also as part of your skill set or team. So that way you have a full stack solution for your audience. They come to you more often than just for strategy, because oftentimes if you allow them just to come for strategy, it would fizzle out. So ask them to come for strategy and also for tactics. And then the last point I would say is don't shy away from gateway projects. So what I would say is if you want to draw business and IT and other alignments together, even if you have a small project, start with it. For example, if they reach out to you as a business architect or an EA team to save costs, take up the project, come up with pragmatic recommendations, and then build trust. With that small project, build trust, and that trust would help you to expand your presence with the larger group.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. I want to go back to that dashboard comment. I think it's such a good and kind of easy way to explain your value. Can you talk a little bit more about impactful or sort of easy to understand dashboards that you have helped or you've seen architecture teams spin up for their C-suite?
Absolutely. I can talk from one experience where we helped a client with a city planning project. We went ahead and they wanted to set up a patient support program. And we kind of sat with them, we did the current state discovery, and then we created a city plan for them on running this patient support program, what kind of business capabilities and technology capabilities required to run this program. But we did not stop there. We kind of extended that and we created a 12 KPIs for them. So we created 12 KPIs in the sense that what are the number of, I would say, hours or training which has gone into this for the customers and also for the operations team. Then what are the number of I would say dollar terms, what is the technical debt which is going to be sunset in the next 2 to 3 years, and how are we tracking on it, and what is the burn rate, and then for that burn rate, what is the business it is bringing in, and how EA investments are supporting all of this. So we kind of created a structured dashboard which is tied into this city plan what we created for them. And we also did a data mapping for it, and then we gave them a dashboard with live data which gets refreshed often. And we introduced this as part of the investment council what they dealt with. So that really helped EA team to have a seat in the investment council, and every new project which comes into this council goes through this validation process. They kind of see where this particular business case which is coming in fits into the bigger picture, number one. Number two is how this impacts the value which is being reported in the dashboard. So once they start seeing things, touch and feel it, and make decisions, now EA is becoming an integral part of business decisions. So that is one example which I can call out.
And those KPIs, were those determined and validated with the input from senior stakeholders, or was that something that just came up from the architecture team?
So generally, that's the right way to do. But in this particular context, we could not do it that way because getting senior stakeholders' time is not easy, especially on a tactical basis to determine the KPIs. So what we did was we kind of did a proactive approach of putting something together, and we presented it to the senior stakeholders as a feedback session, review session. We said, like, this is the way you are giving us X dollars to run this function. So it is our responsibility to tell you how we are using these dollars and what is the value you're getting out of it. And then that kind of gave us the airtime what we were looking for. And then that enabled us to have a dialogue with senior stakeholders, and they suggested a lot of changes to the dashboard. And that built trust with them, and it happened over the course of time. It organically happened in a good way.
Got it. So it sounds like you kind of took a informed hypothesis of what mattered to the senior stakeholders and showed it to them. They were able to give you some commentary, and you kind of went back and were able to alter things after
Absolutely.
that.
Yes.
Got it. That makes sense. And then, do you think app rationalization is the biggest or easiest kind of driver for architecture teams starting out, or are there any other ways to sort of show quick ROI for EA teams?
So there are two things I would say. There is a generative AI fever going on. So oftentimes what we are hearing from the clients is, I want to venture into large language models, but oftentimes we have to remind our clients that what is the strategy you're going to follow? You're going to buy, you're going to build. There are some data compliance aspects of it. So this is where we got to give them the full 360-degree view of this capability. And then this conversation often leads to cost. What are the dollar terms you need? And then that leads to rationalization. They would say where to save money to invest in innovation. So this is one type of conversation we deal with. Another type of conversation is that oftentimes we go to the client and say that, hey, in coming cycles, you're going to cut 20% of your cost. Have you thought about it? Do you want to cut down? Because these clients deprioritize innovation and focus more on cost savings, bottom line. So our projects and value to them is different. We start right away with rationalization using EA framework. So these clients often take that money and pay it back to their shareholders. So in some places, they take the money and they invest in innovative ideas. So depending on the audience, you can present your rationalization case differently.
Yeah. Do you think, have you seen in your time that it's been a challenge for architecture teams to convince stakeholders of the results of their rationalization exercise? So for example, an architecture team says, hey, we need to sunset X, Y, and Z applications, but it's been challenging to get the business to buy into that. Is that something that you see in your experience?
Yeah, every day. We do it every day. So that's the reality. So oftentimes what happens is we give 20 recommendations, and they won't be able to follow through 80% of it because it requires talking to different set of audience, and then it also requires to spend money to save money. That's the reality. That is where the answer is we need to not only give them recommendations, we need to give them what it would take to implement those recommendations. That is one.
Yeah.
Second is, there are two type archetypes in our customers. One archetype is who adopt, embrace transformation and changes in the industry as a seamless everyday activity. And we see another archetype of customers where they kind of pause, they cleanse, and then they kind of innovate, transform. So they kind of force the transformation once in a while. Actually, the second archetype is more prevalent, and the first archetype is a few, but the first archetype is a little more easier to run by, because EA is not only a business architecture function, it is also an industry listening and foresight function. If you have a well-matured EA, they kind of keep listening to industry trends, and then they kind of educate business, and the business seamlessly transitions. So as far this happens, then it is more easier to deal with the industry changes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we talk about here, is the importance of continuous application rationalization. And because if you spin up these projects as sort of a one-time thing, the ease of execution is much lower, the chance of success is much lower as well. But if you can have an architecture team that's kind of integrated with your business processes,
Yes.
convincing people of the changes is easier, but also ensuring you get buy-in is an important part as well. There's a few questions that have come in. This one's from Maddie Moyne. Should EA proposals include technology upgrades or changes?
I would say yes, it should.
Yeah, agreed. This one's from Nitin. He asks, are business analysts and business architecture the same?
If you ask me, I would say it's my personal opinion. Once again, there is no one straight answer to that. Like, I see that a business analyst understands the domain, or expected to understand the domain well, and they can very easily play the role of business architect. So, for example, the taxonomy or the glossary there is having a solid understanding of business capabilities. A business analyst is expected to have good understanding of that. Suppose I employ a group of business architects to reimagine the manufacturing floor for a pharma. They are the best team members to design a business architecture for the new floor plan, where to install, what kind of temperatures or what kind of data points you want to get from the manufacturing floor, how you want to relay that information back to the command center where they can do the analytics. So all of this is a business analyst work. Now imagine, to this team, I'm giving a stencil and saying that document your knowledge in this particular fashion, and that's pretty much his architecture. So once you combine these two skills, a business analyst can become an architect.
Yeah, makes sense. That kind of relates to Priya wrote in a comment, I think, that enterprise architects take the market chaos, lay it over the strategy, and then in turn adjust the roadmap/vision. I think that's kind of a good explanation. You need to take
that's a good explanation. It's well
concepts.
said. Yep, it's well said.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true.
We are coming up on time, but I do want to turn to our last topic, which is AI in the enterprise architecture space. So what do you think about the new AI advents that have come out? Do you think it's going to impact enterprise architecture and how you deliver value to your clients?
So before I go into how it will impact EA world, let me first talk about my view on this AI as a capability or as a concept, right? So now I would say there is this term called budding effect. The English engineer Edward Budding, he invented lawnmower, and this lawnmower was a precursor for sports industry complex. As they started, allowed them to maintain these large sporting fields with this invention, and that allowed them to create a new industry around it. Likewise, we can say light bulb, cotton mills. So this is what is called budding effect, right? So this AI. I see AI as another budding effect. It's going to change. It's already started changing a few years back, and now it is kind of accelerating. So it is going to fundamentally change the way our respective ways of living, ways of working. So I would say, yes, the answer is AI is going to disrupt all aspects, especially in my domain where I deal with pharma and medtech. It's fundamentally changing the way how new drugs are researched, how they are developed, how they are manufactured, commercialized. It's changing the way how these functions operate. Now, EA is no exception for it. So if you look at enterprise architecture, we are talking about an institutional memory on which we operate and make decisions. And that is what is, in essence, EA is. But imagine having this institutional memory and you're applying large language models, generative AI on top of it. It's going to fundamentally change the way how you're going to predict your risks, how you're going to predict your future, how you're going to deal with this institutional memory as a digital twin. So the EA is going to change. AI is going to disrupt the way EA is. The sooner we catch on to these capabilities, it's better for EA function to help the business in an impactful way.
Got it. And yeah, I would say as an EA tool vendor, we are thinking about AI in a few different ways. How can we enable or use AI to let people interact with architecture concepts in kind of a simpler way? Or how can we use AI to actually make recommendations against the underlying repository of information? Is that
Absolutely.
do you see? Yeah, any comments on that?
No, I say absolutely. The AI should be, I see AI is not the goal. AI is a accelerator to the goal. And the goal here is insights. The goal here is
Mhm.
like how you can enable enterprise decision makers, leaders who are pouring in millions of dollars into big bets or small projects alike and expecting value out of it. How EA can step away from it and how it can seamlessly interject itself into the day-to-day decision making.
Mhm.
And as far as your AI capabilities can do that, and that should be your goal. And
Yeah.
it should not be like the framework, EA framework, the meta model, the TOGAF, or like Zachman, whatever you want to talk about, the frameworks in EA. It is something which should be hidden in the back.
Mhm.
And all the end users have to see is how easy it is to push in information and consume information, and how
Yeah.
AI plays a role in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. I think something I heard from another architect is the true architects of the business are really the executive leaders, the C-suite, and they want to utilize readily available information to help them make those big bets with confidence. And I think to the extent that AI can enable that, that's great. But is AI going to be making big decisions for companies in the future? I don't think so. And that kind of brings me to a follow up. Is there this human element? We talk about enterprise architecture as the sort of highest form of architecture that is people first as opposed to technology first. Is there this human element in AI that, or in EA rather, that AI won't ever actually be able to replace?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good insight to dwell on. So I would say throughout this conversation, I purposefully avoided terms. It's by purpose I avoided like data architecture, which is required for EA, the tools which are required, the designs, the meta models which are required. I purposefully stayed away from it because that is the easiest bit. If you can spend your weekend on these concepts, you're going to get it. Now, what AI cannot replace is original thinking, the human consciousness and original thinking and creativity. And EA is no exception to it. So as we start thinking why, the question of why we exist as a group, and how we can put a kind of like stay away from that label of EA and focus more on what is in it for my audience, what is in it for my clients, and apply your original. Automatically, original thinking will kick in to solve new ideas. So that is something which AI cannot do. AI can
Mhm.
help you to consume the existing information and it can make a prediction out of it or prescription out of it. But original
Yeah,
thinking is still reserved for humans. And EA
yeah,
function is no different.
yeah. Um, cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. There's Um, one or two more comments or questions. This one's from Vijay. I think EA, and I think this is off the topic of AI, but he says, I think EA is a disciplined way of implementing projects in a way that stakeholders are involved and drives the key decision indicators of success. Is that, do you think that's kind of a good summary of what EA is?
It's a very good way of looking at EA, but I would avoid the word discipline because oftentimes what happens is we can say methodical way of thinking, methodical way of executing business. The moment the one which I always coach my team to avoid is don't go and talk to your clients about methodology, framework, or discipline, it kind of ticks them away. So
Yeah.
instead, go and talk to them in terms of how you can make their life easier. Because
Yeah.
methodology and discipline is reserved for us to execute. But for them, it is more like how you can make their process easier, how you can make their like thinking process easier. It can be as simple as an Excel sheet and bunch of SharePoint sites to do work, or it can be like as nuanced and sophisticated as using a EA tool to do. It does not matter to our audience. All it matters is like today they're spending 10 hours to do something. Can they spend 5 hours to do the same thing? Can they grow without growing? These are the kind of questions we got to ask ourselves, prepare ourselves before we meet with our audience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you want to leave out sort of the inputs into enterprise architecture and just speak to people about the value they'll be receiving, whether that's refined processes, save time, save money, etc. Um, so yeah, I think that's it. We're coming up on time. I appreciate Sanjiv you taking the time and chatting with me. We'll go through the comments at the end, and if there's other um, if there's other things we want to answer, we can follow up. The recording for this session will also be on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it if they miss it. I do want to do a quick plug for an upcoming webinar that we have called Amplify. The webinar is "The Future is Now: How AI Will Power EA," and that will be on June 7th at 10 a.m. EST. So make sure to tune into that to hear about how we will be implementing AI into our EA practices. So thanks everyone for chiming in. Sanjiv, thanks to you, and we'll talk soon.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yep, over and out. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.